Hey guys, how is everybody doing? And as of recording this video, Evil Dead Burn is now officially playing in theaters. And to cap off my Evil Dead review series leading up to it, here are my thoughts on the fifth installment, Evil Dead Rise. Before I even begin, I remember when this movie was coming out, and I was like really excited. Ooh, most anticipated horror movie of the year, yada yada yada. And then when I did my first Evil Dead ranking, I said this was my second favorite. I must have been on a huge Evil Dead high at that time, because this is not my second favorite. So starting off with my positives on Evil Dead Rise, and my first positive, a lot like the last Evil Dead film that I talked about with the Fede Alvarez film, the opening of this movie is fucking awesome. And what I like about this opening that is different from the 2013 version is that it actually seems to have a purpose. Now in the 2013 one, it kind of just set the stage, set the tone of what to expect throughout the whole movie, and kind of this new era of Evil Dead where it's more brutal and, really gory, kind of, out to it's more kind of like torture porn Evil Dead now than it is silly Evil Dead, but that was what the opening of the last one was. But in this one, it seems to have a purpose because not only does it show, just an awesome opening, but it also kind of leads up to it at the very end because this movie takes place a day earlier before the events of this opening, and you see at the very end of the movie it sets up the opening. Which might sound confusing. But the opening in this movie is also just fucking awesome because it feels like old Evil Dead again you know, with the scene where the girl is reading a page of the book that this other character is reading. I think it's Wuthering Heights, which actually got a movie adaptation earlier this year. And she's like reading the whole page, which is a callback to Cheryl's scene in the original when she's reading the deck of cards, which I thought was a really nice callback. And let me tell you, that opening really is fucking brutal because she just fucking scalps that goddamn girl, which is just fucking nuts. And not only is it a really brutal and really good opening, the title card that we get in this one is easily one of the best title cards we have ever seen in any horror movie or a film, period. And this is definitely the best title card that we've ever gotten in this series alone. But it's not only is it the best of the series, but it's also one of the best of the entire horror genre. That fucking title card to me still lives rent free in my head. And what I liked about this one is how different it felt from the other ones because it doesn't take place in a cabin or in that isolation of a cabin. Instead, it moves to the isolation of apartment complex, which I really like the usage of it. A lot of people were disappointed by it because they felt like, oh, they would kind of go floor to floor to floor or whatever. But I really like the apartment setting because it also kind of adds that callback to the original where the bridge is taken out, but in this one the stairs and the elevator are taken out and they don't work anymore, so they're stuck on this one floor throughout the whole movie instead of like throughout the whole apartment. And I really like that, and that really shows the isolation and does a different type of isolation in this franchise because we've always had that isolation, whether it was the cabin or hell even in 1300 AD, because like where the hell are you going to go? It's 1300 AD. There's nowhere to really go. But the isolation that they go with in this one is an apartment complex, and I've always really liked that. And just the apartment alone and how small and crowded it is, it shows that isolation, and I've always really liked that. I was never disappointed that we never got to go out through the entire apartment. That never bothered me at all. I always liked the one little floor that we were on. I felt like the usage of that alone, and they use it to their advantage. There's a lot of also really cool moments on the apartment, which they use the apartment setting pretty well, like the whole scene where they're looking through the little eyeglass, which is a very very well shot scene where she's like killing the guys in the hallway. That's an awesome shot sequence. That's one of my favorite parts of this movie. So I've always really liked the apartment complex. I felt like they used it right, and I felt like they used it in the correct way. Again, I was never disappointed that we never got to see the whole thing like a lot of people were hoping, but what we got I really enjoyed. This movie also has a really good theme of motherhood and sisterhood, which is very apparent when you just look at the poster alone when it says "Mommy loves you" or whatever, and she's just hugging her children as a deadite. I've always loved the theme of motherhood and sisterhood. For someone who has four sisters, yes, four sisters, I gravitate a lot towards my sisters. They're some of my favorite people, especially my 2-year-old sister Tatum. Love her to death, and obviously I love the other ones. sometimes. But I've, for someone that has sisters and, who, has helped raise a lot of my sisters because I was an only child for the longest time. And, to help, raise my sisters and to see some of them are 8 years old is fucking crazy to me. But, as someone who gravitates towards sisterhood and gravitates towards his sisters, that theme in this movie really works for me and has always kind of gravitated towards me. And I've always liked that. I do feel like the bond of the sisters. That's never apparent in this movie. That is an issue I do have with the movie. With the theme is there and it's used pretty well, but I never thought like the bond with the three sisters in this movie. I've never felt it, and it didn't really feel like they were there. We never got to learn anything about the characters, so maybe that's an issue. But nevertheless, and just the theme of motherhood is also pretty apparent just with, the Deadite herself with the I forget her name already, but the mom of this movie who turns into a Deadite. Not only does she give a great performance, but she also as a Deadite, she also gives a great performance as just the mother of the movie. And then with the main character of Beth, who's a fucking badass throughout the whole movie, she is pregnant throughout the movie, and kind of sets her up of being a mom. And this is kind of like a weird way to test her mother skills in a weird way. But the two themes of motherhood and sisterhood to me are very apparent, and I feel like they always work. Now, again, the bond of the sisters isn't there. Maybe the bond of motherhood isn't always there, but I've always felt like the theme of it always works. And man, oh man, if you thought the Deadites in the last movie were fucking horrifying, my god, these are probably the most terrifying Deadites that we've ever seen. And it just comes from the mom herself. The mother Deadite, I forget her name, she is in argument for being probably the best Deadite we have ever seen from this franchise. Her and Mia are easily the two best Deadites we have ever seen from this franchise because she is so fucking good in this role and she's just fucking terrifying because not only are Deadites fucking scary, but this is a mother figure and that's very apparent of like the shit that she's saying and the way she kills people or whatever. I've always felt like that she's one of the most terrifying Deadites, and even when I first watched this movie when it first came out, that was one of the first things I knew is that she was going to be fucking terrifying. And I remember I stayed away from a lot of advertisements because I heard that her best scenes were shown in the trailer. Good thing I stayed away from them because her scenes absolutely fucking deliver in this movie because she is absolutely terrifying. Whether it's her looking through the little eyeglass thing or whatever in the apartment. She goes, "Open up now," and then she's trying to trick her kids like nothing but a big kiss nothing that a big old kiss from you won't fix or whatever, something like that. And it's just so creepy. And there's like moments where she's kind of being a trying to have that like sweet mother figure role as the Deadite, and it's also just so sad and creepy at times. But these Deadites are fucking creepy. Now the other ones are kind of just off to the side. They're just there, like they don't fucking do anything half the time. But the mother Deadite in this movie is absolutely fucking terrifying. It is in the running for best Deadite in the entire franchise.
Mommy's with the maggots now.
And man, oh man, is this movie fucking brutal. The practical effects in this movie are, I'm a broken record at this point talking about the practical effects in these movies because the practical effects, as always, are fucking awesome in this movie. But not only are they awesome, they are fucking brutal. The one scene that always gets to me, that always fucking like makes me queeve up, is the scene where the daughter is eating the fucking wine glass and just swallow. I actually just gagged there. That was fucking embarrassing. But the scene where she's swallowing the glass and it's just poking out of her fucking neck, I hated that. But it was also fucking awesome because the practical effects in this movie are fucking brutal. Now, the other Evil Dead is just more trying to get under your skin, kind of freak you out. This one's just out to make you fucking feel the brutality. And this movie is very popular with the cheese grater scene. It's only in one scene, and I do kind of feel like it was kind of, underused because there wasn't enough leg meat, I guess I could say. Not enough brutality with the cheese grater, but it was iconic for a reason, I guess. But the brutality in this movie is just so fucking mean, dude. Like the other ones are kind of just either funny or the other one being just downright scary. This one's just fucking mean. And lastly, I do think the Easter eggs throughout the whole movie of callbacks to the other Evil Deads or even other horror movies, I felt like they were used pretty well. Now, a lot of people felt like they said like, "Oh, they overused them, and then, it's too noticeable." I'm like, "Well, that's what an Easter egg's supposed to be. It's supposed to be noticeable. Us longtime fans are gonna notice it." Like the Cheryl scene with the reading the cards, that's a callback. Even the eyeball gag from Evil Dead 2's called back. Like, there's just a lot of good callbacks and Easter eggs throughout this whole movie that, hell, even if you're not a big Evil Dead fan and this is the first one you see, it wouldn't, like, leave a void in you necessarily that you missed it. You would probably still find it entertaining, and hell, when you go back and watch the other Evil Deads, you would probably think of this movie and be like, oh, this was a callback in the new one or something like that. I've always really liked it. It's never also distracting. It doesn't necessarily rely on them like a lot of new horror reboots or requels, legacy sequels, whatever the fuck a lot of new horror movies seem to do where they rely on callbacks. Looking at you, Halloween. But and doesn't necessarily my god necessarily rely on them, and that's something I really liked, where you can notice the Easter eggs, but it doesn't, but it, like, even if you miss them, it doesn't bother you, and it doesn't rely on you to notice them when you do notice them, it adds to your experience as an Evil Dead fan. But now moving on to my mixed aspects, and I want to make this very clear. This is something I really, really like that they're doing. I really like the route of the anthology route that they're going, where they follow new characters, a new group of kids, or something like that. Whatever. I really like the anthology route, and now that we're focusing on different characters, now that Bruce Campbell is retired as Ash, which it sucks that we're never going to see Ash again, or get the finish of Ash versus Evil Dead. Thanks, stars. But I do like the route that they're taking of doing the anthology thing, find a new group of characters, and they just, kind of, get possessed one by one. But my issue with that is that it ends up being repetitive with the 2013 remake, and now Evil Dead Rise, and now Evil Dead Burn, and now Evil Dead Wrath coming out in the next 2 years. It's just a wash, rinse, repeat method. Characters find the Necronomicon. Stupid character reads from the Necronomicon. People get possessed one by one. Brutality. People die. The end. It's just a wash, rinse, repeat method, but it seems to add something new in each movie. I like that, but when it's just the same thing every time, and it's just a story you've seen before, and you know what's going to happen once they read out of that fucking book, which they should not be reading out of that book, especially in this one. That fucking thing had teeth. What made you think that opening it would be fun, reading out of it? What made you think playing the record player would be smart? You heard a motherfucker in the background, Bruce Campbell cameo, saying like it's called the Book of the Dead for the reason. Don't fucking read from it or whatever. Like, after a while, it's just like, okay, I've seen this story and it's starting to get repetitive. I like the anthology route, but it gets repetitive. And now moving on to my negatives, and if anything, these are small little nitpicks. I think the whole Deadite demon ball thing that we get at the end, I think that's really goofy.
Is that? What the fuck is that?
And I didn't like that. That to me was stupid. Even when I first watched this movie, I thought that was stupid. Now, I understand you're trying to add something to it, but it just reminded me too much of the thing. It reminded me too much of that. You know, the thing at the end of the movie where the big monster thing comes out and Kurt Russell blows him up or whatever? It reminded me too much of that. And to me, I'm like, okay, there's paying homage to something and also just making it look fucking stupid. And this movie made it look fucking stupid. Because to me, it was just too goofy. I'm like, what the fuck? And like when they're fucking crawling inside of her and shit, it's just fucking weird. Which, I guess, motherhood theme, I guess. But, yeah, I just thought that was stupid. And a lot of the foreshadowing kind of took me out of the movie. There's a lot of foreshadowing, like, no, mom, I don't have your scissors, and she throws it under the bed or whatever. And then there's like a scene where the garage door won't open, and she goes, "Uh-oh, I hope the garage door opens later." And then there's a fucking wood chipper in the parking garage for some stupid reason, which we all know where that's gonna go. And like, there's just a lot of foreshadowing in this movie. To me, it just doesn't. It's very distracting, and then you're like, okay, I know where that's gonna go, especially in the first fucking foreshadowing when she throws the scissors under the couch. You're like, oh, that's gonna come back later. It's gonna come back later. And again, it kind of took me out of the movie. I understand foreshadowing, but there's also overdoing it. But overall, guys, Evil Dead Rise is another great installment in this franchise and keeps the consistency of the Evil Dead franchise. And hopefully, with the new Evil Dead Burn, the consistency continues. This is a damn good sequel and a damn good follow up, whether it's a sequel to the remake, which I still think is a remake, but it seems to be more of a follow up to the original series because it has that more original series taste to it other than the last one did. But this is still a damn good sequel, and if you're an Evil Dead fan, you're definitely going to enjoy this one. But what do you guys think about Evil Dead Rise? Have you seen it? What do you think about it? Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? Do you think this is another great installment of the franchise? Or do you think that this is where the franchise starts to lose its footing? Let me know in the comments below and we shall talk about it. If you like this video, like it. If you love to subscribe to notifications so you will get notified for all my latest videos. And look out for my Evil Dead ranking later on this weekend. Thank you all so much for watching. And of course, until my next video, I'll see you all next time.